Get Rich Education is brought to you by Norada Real Estate and International Coffee Farms.
Welcome to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold, giving you information and ideas on the investment that has turned more ordinary people into millionaires and billionaires than anything else, and can provide you with more wealth and happiness than you ever thought possible. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, and educator, Keith Weinhold.
Welcome to Get Rich Education, episode 68. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Hey, how's it going? You're back for another content-filled week here as we're going to talk about some of the best websites and apps for real estate investing today. We're ultimately here building your wealth, changing how you think, and in the process, perhaps even changing who you are. You don't just want to survive, you want to thrive. I mean, why would you merely want to survive when you can thrive? But, it's not a straight line between where you are now and where you want to be, okay? You won't experience a straight line of progression from where you are now up to where you want to be. A straight line would not be natural or realistic. You will have setbacks along the way, and your line will zig and zag its way more gradually toward where you want to be. There are no straight lines in nature. Yes, there are no straight lines in nature. A river meanders all over the place as it flows from the mountain to the ocean. A tree can't quite grow up straight because there is wind and there's rain. You will experience hardships at times that make you feel like you aren't getting any closer to living your daydream. Well, we're trying to minimize the number of hard bumps that you feel along your path from where you are now to where you want to be. We've got some great shows coming up here, including a deep dive into numbers and due diligence with popular real estate investing author Frank Gallinelli in a couple weeks. Down the road, we also have Daniel Ammerman coming onto the show. Daniel is a big macroeconomic brain, and he and I will discuss U.S. monetary policy, the overall economy, and I'll probably even ask Daniel about what are some signals out there to look for on the horizon that could be indicators of a real estate crash. Recently, I heard from a few groups of Get Rich Education listeners from my local area here in Anchorage that reached out to me and wanted to meet me in person, and that was great to do. Sometimes I would show up to meet these listeners all by myself, or other times GRE's John Collins was with me. It was great to meet listeners in person and hear their stories, learn about their investing challenges, and field their questions in Anchorage's restaurants and coffee shops. Thank you for reaching out. A number of them were loyal listeners that have heard all 68 GRE episodes. I'm so grateful for that. Today, you're sort of, if you will, on the show, you're going to get information on how to get more information as we're going to discuss some popular real estate websites and apps, and some that are related to real estate as well. We've got a guest to help us do that with more of the resources for those that self-manage property. And then after the guest and I chat, I'm going to give you some more of my favorite investing websites and apps after our interview that I use to do things like study a geographic market and some other things. And a lot of those resources that pertain to those of you that use professional managers is what I'll talk about after we chat with the guest. So let's meet our guest. Today's guest is an experienced land investor, and he's a residential income property owner. He also has nearly a decade of experience in the commercial banking industry. You might already be familiar with his name as he's been a longtime author at Bigger Pockets. He's also the founder of retipster.com. It's a real estate investing blog that offers real-world guidance for part-time real estate investors. Welcome to Get Rich Education, Seth Williams.
Hey there, Keith. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Hey, good. It's great to have you. Like a lot of us, back in the beginning, you described yourself as kind of a regular guy with a full-time job, just trying to figure out how real estate investing fits together. So before we go forward, take us back a little bit and tell us about how Seth Williams came to be Seth Williams.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was probably back in like 2005 or so when I first started getting into real estate, and I was reading the Rich Dad, Poor Dad stuff like most of us do. And it was was around that time when I started to realize that, real estate could be a thing for me. Like that could be a legitimate part of my future. But whenever I was trying to find rental properties or, fix and flip opportunities, like the things that you're supposed to do as a real estate investor, I'd be looking on, the MLS listings, and I could never find a deal that made sense. Like the prices the numbers just didn't work. And I was getting really, really frustrated by that. And it wasn't until a few years later when I figured out that that land is actually a very underutilized opportunity that most people don't even really think about. And there are a lot of benefits that go with that, simply because it's a very, very simple type of property without a lot of complexity to it. When you're looking for those properties in the right places, it's really not hard to get these properties for like very, very, very cheap prices, like laughably low. And when you can get them for so cheap, you can turn around and sell them at a small markup and make some really good money on it without really any of the complications. So that's kind of been like my main, bread and butter investment strategy. And I've also been getting into, residential income properties as well. I've got just a couple of duplexes right now in the town where I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I've been using a property manager since I got into those, and has turned out to be a really good choice. Partially because I found a really good one who's very competent and they just know what they're doing.
That's right. I always say life's too short for property management yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I had always heard the horror stories of dealing with tenants and all this stuff, and people had warned me about getting into rentals because of that. And I just sort of decided I don't even want to go there. If I'm ever going to do this, I'm going to do it right from day one and just get a good property manager. And so that's kind of how I've done it. And it's worked out really well. And planning to keep doing that and buy more of them in the years to come. And yeah, those are kind of the ways that I'm into real estate.
Yeah, a good property manager can really make your life right.
Yeah.
Now, if you're into land investing, you probably don't need a property manager. A lot of times people's initial shortcoming with land investing is that, it doesn't produce any cash flow. But my longtime listeners know, if they heard episode 27 with Mark Podolsky, there is a way to make raw land cash flow.
Yeah, when you can get properties for cheap enough and then turn around and sell them with seller financing, it's actually very feasible to build long-term cash flow through just the payments that you get on those properties. And usually, like the initial down payment or the first, one or two payments that you get from the borrower will pay off all of your investment into the property. And then for the next 5 to 10 years or however long the note is, it's just pure profit. It's a pretty beautiful thing.
Well, I want to get into talking about some of the best real estate websites, apps, and other resources that our listeners can best take advantage of, since real estate's it doesn't really have one end-all be-all site that you can go to, because it does bring in so many disparate sectors and parts of a society into what matters to real estate investors. But before we do that, if we can just drop back for a moment, you mentioned Grand Rapids. And, I've associated Grand Rapids, Michigan as a pretty good cash flowing real estate market. So before we go ahead, you just want to give us a little bit on how you characterize the Grand Rapids, Michigan real estate market for investors?
I don't know that I would say I'm terribly well educated on a lot of the other markets around the country, but I do know Grand Rapids is one of the lesser expensive markets, in that it's not going to cost you, an arm and a leg to get the down payment to get your first property. But when you compare that to the actual cash flow that a lot of these properties can generate, it's pretty good. I mean, I was able to get both of my duplexes for very good prices, and they've cash flowed very well. And even now, that the market has gotten a lot better, I mean, there's still pretty good deals out there. And I know, when you compare it to places like Southern California, where I honestly don't know how people buy anything around there. I mean, it's just, they must make tons of money or something, but I mean, it's just it's a different world compared to some of the larger markets where real estate is a lot more expensive. So yeah, I've enjoyed it here, and I think it's been a really good place to kind of grow my portfolio.
Yeah, for buy and hold real estate investors that buy in coastal California, either they just don't know any better, or they just have stupid amounts of money. It's one or the other, or both.
Yeah, could be.
So with Grand Rapids, what are the market drivers there?
We've got a pretty well diversified economy here. There's a lot of big employers. I know, like, a lot of times when people think of Michigan, they think Detroit, and they think of, General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, these huge, auto companies that pretty much employ everybody in some way, shape, or form. Grand Rapids is a little bit different than that. There's a lot more diversification. There's a lot of big furniture manufacturers, and in terms of just employment and the overall economy, it's not like if one company goes out, everything is going to collapse. It doesn't really work like that here. And I think that's one thing that's really helped the real estate market is that it's just all the eggs are not in one basket. It's a lot more diversified.
Maybe one thing that helps Grand Rapids a little bit is that it is often just associated and lumped in with Detroit as soon as they hear the word Michigan. But if one looks on a map, Grand Rapids is way, way far away, way west of Detroit as well. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's kind of hard to completely distance, this city from Detroit because it just being in the same state. There are certain commonalities, but there are a lot of differences though. It's kind of a different world from the big city over on the east side of the state.
well, as your progression occurred from being a full-time job worker, just trying to figure out how real estate investing fits together, and you picked up some local rental properties, you've basically morphed into being a great source of information. I've really enjoyed your writing for one, and you have a lot of that at retipster.com. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about the website, and then we'll talk about some of the resources you have there.
Yeah, absolutely. The blog was something I started, I think it was about 3 years ago now. And it was really just my way of kind of letting the world know everything that I know. I sort of realized that after buying and selling so many pieces of land and then rental properties and my own houses and all this stuff, I just kind of built up this big library of knowledge in my head. And I knew that there were some other people out there who were kind of talking about similar stuff. But a lot of the blogs that I saw, they weren't doing that awesome of a job of explaining things. Like it would just kind of put a lot of fluff out there, and I would read an article and walk away with nothing really substantial. And my goal with the blog was to just put it all out there. Everything I knew, just kind of brain dump and really explain things for people so that when they walked away, they could actually have some actionable action items and just kind of understand what they needed to do.
Well, you write really well. So let's talk about some of those best websites and apps for real estate investors. What are some of your favorites? What are some of the ones where the users find the most value?
Yeah, sure. Well, I've actually I've got a page on my website just called the resources page. You can find it on the navigation bar, but it's a big long list of most of the cool tools and websites and resources that I know about. And some of the interesting ones that I've picked up on over the years. There's one I've actually found myself using a lot recently called iJot, and it's a website. I'm sort of surprised there's not more of these out there, but it's a website where you can put together video emails and send them to people. So if I wanted to introduce myself to you, Keith, if you and I had never talked before, it's a really good way to actually, let you see my face, hear my voice, and actually almost as if I'm sitting there right in front of you. I mean, it's the same concept as an email where you're just sending a one-way message. But you can do it in a lot more personable way where you can actually sort of feel like you know me at the end of that. And that's one that I've been using a lot when I'm just trying to introduce myself to people.
Okay, and that's a great resource either within or outside real estate, sure. And that's iJot is EYEJOT.com. So this way you can personalize it so the recipient kind of feels like they're getting to know you and your mannerisms and your personality a little bit. And yet at the same time, you can do that when it's convenient for you to record and send it.
Absolutely. And that's something that's really helpful about that is a lot of the properties that I buy these days are really nowhere near me. They're on the other side of the country. And to actually work with a seller or a buyer on the other end and to just rely on an email or a phone call every now and then, it can't quite do the same thing that a video email can do, just in terms of making yourself more relatable. There's something about, putting yourself in a video where a lot of people, I don't know if people just aren't comfortable with it or if they just don't want to do it. But, when you take that step, it kind of puts you above a lot of other people just in terms of giving you credibility and making you seem like a real relatable person. So I found it to be a really helpful tool.
Yep, that way the recipient is going to remember you. And if it comes to serving you or it comes to serving another person, they might just serve you first. They're going to feel like they know you better. You're a real person.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one that I have used a lot and talked about a lot on my site is called Agent Pro 24/7. And there's a few other services like this out there, and I think they're all probably have their pros and cons. But Agent Pro 24/7 is a site that I discovered probably 6 or 7 years ago. And the reason it's particularly helpful for me and what I do in the land investing realm is that it can be used to generate lists of motivated sellers. So if you're trying to do a direct mail campaign, it lets you put together a very specific list in whichever county or zip code or city that you're trying to work in. and you can go ahead and do that direct mail campaign. And the cost is, relatively very, very low. And it's the list that you get is very well organized. And the tool can also be used to do property research. Like you can pull up parcel maps of properties and see where the actual boundaries are, which is a very important thing, especially in the land realm. But it also shows you information about the previous owners and what the property sold for and when it sold, and all the transactions dating back years into the past. Just a lot of information that I think you actually can find it for free other places if you're willing to get into your county's website or even give them a call and ask. This is stuff is all public record. But the nice thing about Agent Pro is that it compiles it in a more consistent way. So you do the same steps in any county in the country, and it's always going to be in the same place. You don't have to learn a new system every time you're trying to do it. And I've found that to be very, very helpful. So that's another biggie that I've relied on a lot over the years.
Okay, that's agentpro247.com.
And then another one that's probably, common knowledge to a lot of people, but Google Earth is a pretty big one. And then even Zillow I've found to be helpful just in terms of trying to research properties and figure out, what kind of information is out there on the property I'm looking at and what similar properties are selling for in the same market. I just found those tools to be pretty helpful, especially in the land realm. Another one that I've actually discovered probably within the past year now is a website called wegolook.com.
Oh, yeah, that is a good one. There's really been a lot of buzz about WeGoLook here recently.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually did a little blog post where the first time I ever used them to, go out and take a look at my property. What this company does is you basically can hire them. I think the starting price is about $69, but it's a property inspection service where all they do is they hire a looker in the area, and they simply drive out to the property, take a bunch of pictures from the outside. They can even do video if you want. And then they do a little write-up just explaining what they saw when they were there. So this is not like a full-blown property inspection where they're going inside the house and examining everything. It's not that. It's just like, say if you own a rental property in another state and you've heard that, I don't know, the tenant trashed the place or something like that. You can hire WeGoLook for a very cheap price to just swing by, take some pictures, and report back to you just saying what they saw. And I use WeGoLook to actually look at some of the vacant land properties before I buy them, just to make sure they look like what I think they look like, and just to get a view of it on the actual site. And just given that price and the fact that it's an actual reliable company and they have a standard format and how they give you the information, it's a very, very helpful resource. I've tried to do similar things by hiring people on Craigslist or getting realtors and just asking them to help me out. And sometimes that works. It can be a viable way to do it, but you just never know what you're going to get, because sometimes people will just blow you off and, not respond or give you terrible pictures that aren't helpful. WeGoLook it's just they have a standard format, and you always kind of know what you're going to get.
And again, that's wegolook.com. So, listeners, you usually have your property inspector be the one that goes inside the home, details the findings, and takes the photos. WeGoLook, that might be used for something like Seth just mentioned. And, think about it as well. If you want an extra layer of due diligence, and you can call this relatively cheap insurance, what if your WeGoLook third-party looker shows up and, he lets you know there's a lot of airplane noise, or, boy, the neighbors have like a whole pack of barking dogs or something like that. So Google Earth or Google Street View might not let you know something like that. WeGoLook has over 20,000 people that they call lookers, and WeGoLook also inspects automobiles, RVs, heavy equipment, even boats. You probably want to make sure that it's not a sunken ship that you're buying. So, well, Seth and I are going to come back and talk about quite a few more resources that are valuable to real estate investors, especially those that are web and app-based. You're listening to Get Rich Education. Our guest is retipster.com's Seth Williams. More when we come back. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Through Get Rich Education and International Coffee Farms, you can own your own half-acre parcels of a passive income-generating coffee farm in Panama for as little as $18,000. It's a low-risk opportunity with an average annual return projected at 12%. The farms are professionally managed for you on a turnkey basis, and you own the land. To learn more, visit internationalcoffeefarms.com.
Are Are you looking for a roadmap to financial freedom? If so, we have a solution for you. Norada Real Estate is offering a limited number of free strategy sessions to help you get out of the rat race. Learn how you can create wealth and build monthly passive income. To set up a time with one of our knowledgeable investment counselors, simply go to noradarealestate.com. That's NORADA realestate.com.
This is Entrepreneur on Fire's John Lee Dumas. Don't follow money, make money follow you with Get Rich Education.
Welcome back to Get Rich Education with our guest, REtipster.com's Seth Williams. REtipster offers real-world guidance for part-time real estate investors. So, Seth, what are some of those other websites and apps that people really find valuable?
One, it kind of depends on where you're at in your business. If you're somebody who's running a business that's been established for a long time, this may or may not be helpful. But a cool thing that I discovered this past year was this logo creator tool with Squarespace. Squarespace.com/logo is how you get to it. But it's this logo generator where you can just type in the name of your company and you can add an image to the logo, and it's shockingly easy. It's amazing how easy it is, and then how good the logo ends up looking. Like when I did it, I was like, wow, I cannot believe, in literally 60 seconds or less, I had a logo that I actually wasn't ashamed of. So if you're somebody who needs a logo for your business, I found that to be a really helpful tool. You can either get the logo that you generate for free, or you can get a higher resolution version of it for $10, which is a lot cheaper than a lot of the other options out there, where it's like a minimum of a couple $100 to get in the door. So, and then another thing that I've been finding pretty helpful, there's a website called uslegal.com, where if you need, you name it, any kind of legal document, whether it be a deed or a land contract or a lease or a rental agreements or whatever, US Legal has pretty much everything that you would ever need. And it even gets to the point of being state specific. So there's a lot of different documents out there that will vary depending on the state you're working in. And US Legal has long been just a really good resource to go to in terms of finding the exact document that I need. So that's been another helpful item there.
Okay, and that could be great for real estate investors that are perhaps looking for a property inspection form just at move in and move out when you do the walkthrough, or some good ideas for lease templates and so on.
In terms of just looking at the apps on my phone, the things that I'm using pretty much every day, one is the RingCentral app. I don't know if you have a separate business phone number, Keith, or how you do that. But personally, I've got, I think it's about 3 phone numbers right now that I use for various things in my business. And the company that I've been using is just called RingCentral. And the reason I bring that up is because they have a free app. Once you subscribe to their service, the app goes on your iPhone or your Droid. And the cool thing about the app is that you can call from your phone and be calling from your actual business phone number. And it's kind of a similar concept to Google Voice. It's the same general thing, but I've found, at least when maybe I was using the wrong app or something, but when I was using Google Voice, it didn't quite have the flexibility that I needed. It just didn't have all the options that I would find useful in my business. So RingCentral is a service that I've been using for a long time now, and I've found it to be a pretty decent one. And then there's another app that I use a lot on my phone, and it has to do with whenever I'm trying to take pictures of a property. And the app is called Pro HDR. And the reason it's cool, I'm not sure if you know much about photography or specifically HDR photography, but HDR stands for, I think it's high dynamic range, I believe. And what that means is with HDR photography, you've probably seen some of these pictures out there where it's like a picture of a sunset or something like that. And it's just it's so colorful. It's just a gorgeous picture. And, all the oranges and the reds and the yellows just really pop. And the reason those pictures look so good is because what they're doing is they're taking a few different pictures of the exact same scene. And some of those pictures are at a very high range of light, so everything's really bright. And other pictures are at a very low range where everything is dark. And then it stitches those pictures together, and it takes all the right light levels from all the different pictures and puts them together into one, which makes the picture just look a lot more vibrant than it would if you just took one image. And the Pro HDR app, it does that for you. And it does it very simply by taking two pictures, one that's really bright and one that's really dark, and then automatically puts it together and automatically adjusts the light ranges to where they need to be. And the result is it's like within less than a second, you can get a picture that just looks a few levels above what you would normally get with just the typical app on your phone. So that's especially with what I do with taking pictures of land outside. I actually don't do it a ton anymore, but I mean, when I do, it's just a really, really good app for getting those kind of pictures very easily.
Okay, that's the Pro HDR app again. So for all you real estate investors that are self-managing, where you might want to take a good photo of the property inside or outside, real estate's such a visual, tangible thing, so that might help you out. Now, HomeClick is a website that some have found valuable. Tell us about HomeClick, Seth.
Yeah, HomeClick is the site where I always get, whenever I have to get like a toilet or a sink or a faucet or any kind of like fixture for one of my rental properties or even for my own house. That's usually the place I go. They sell a brand of toilet called Toto, which I've found to just be awesome because they use very little water and they like never clog. They're just very well made. It's like a Japanese brand of toilet. So that's where I go whenever I need that. And I found that their prices are usually just as good, if not better, than the places I would go, in my hometown. And the nice thing is that they will actually mail it to wherever you are, and it doesn't really bring the cost up. So I've just found that to be a really convenient place to get those kinds of replacement items. And then another website there is called Landlordology. It's run by a friend of mine. His name is Lucas Hall, and it's basically just a blog where there's all kinds of articles and information for people who own rental properties, whether they're trying to manage them themselves. I think that's like kind of his key audience, but there's just a lot of various insights there. I've done a couple guest posts for him as well, but I think that's a really good site to check out. And one other site that I just think is a lot of fun is called The Lighter Side of Real Estate. It's another blog out there that I've done some stuff for, and it's just hilarious. Like there's all kinds of different articles that just do what very few other people are doing, in that they just don't take it so seriously. They just they find the things that a lot of people struggle with and kind of make light of them. And they've got a really good Facebook page. If you follow that, there's all kinds of stuff they post on there all the time. It's really just for fun, honestly, which I think there needs to be a lot more of that out there in the real estate space, because there's a lot of stuff that we just kind of need to laugh at. And it's almost kind of like therapeutic in a way to look at some of that stuff. So,
yeah, I think the lighter side of real estate, that's where a self-manager needs to go, because you have so much pain in your life sometimes that if you're self-managing, you need to go over there and laugh once in a while. So
I agree.
Hey, Seth, well, this has been a nice roundup of some good websites and resources here for real estate investors. How do my listeners find out more about you?
Really, all you got to do is check out my blog. It's at retipster.com. And it's pretty self-explanatory once you get there. If you ever need to get a hold of me for any reason, you can get a hold of me through the contact page right up there in the navigation bar. And yeah, that's all you got to do.
Yeah, and Seth has a number of resources over there. You can also find archived articles over at retipster.com from all sorts of different ways to invest in real estate. For example, he has an article called Essential Resources for Buying and Selling Properties Out of State. Another one's The Real Estate Professional's Guide to Landscape Photography. Another one's Using Redfin to Value Vacant Land. So you can check all that out at retipster.com. Seth Williams, thank you so much for coming on to Get Rich Education today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you for bringing the value there, Seth. For some of my favorite websites and apps, now for general market data by region, city, neighborhood, or school within the United States, check out bls.gov and also check out citydata.com. That's city-data.com. I think I've mentioned that second one on the show a long time ago. Both of those sites, bls.gov and citydata.com, they have an almost dizzying amount of information, and you're going to need to sort it in order to narrow it down. When you use bls.gov and city-data.com, be mindful that if you're reading about crime in a metro, for example, remember that you should be more concerned with crime in your target sub-market or neighborhood more so than the wider metro area. I mean, just think about the neighborhood that you live in within your city. I mean, you wouldn't want someone else painting it with a broad brush. And, just because there's crime in a bad neighborhood on the other side of your city, it brings all the crime statistics down for that entire metro. But it wouldn't be right to say that your home must be in a dangerous place just because you live somewhere within that city. One site that has a lot of this data that's more specific to real estate investors is neighborhoodscout.com, from appreciation rates to school district ratings, okay? And unlike a lot of the other sites that we've mentioned so far today, which are free, Neighborhood Scout does have a fee. All right, what if there was an app where you can use your smartphone to take a photo of the outside of a property, and often that app will show you pictures of the inside of that home? Yes, just based on a photo that you took on the outside of the home. Well, the HomeSnap app does that for you. HomeSnap also gives you a lot of the property details when you take a photo of the outside. I believe that HomeSnap relies on you having your location services setting enabled on your phone in conjunction with that exterior photo. Between those two things, that's how they provide you with those property details. Amazing, isn't it? And it's not brand new. HomeSnap has been around for a few years. Another app is Property Tracker. That's ideal for anyone that owns more than one investment property, especially if you've crossed state borders into out-of-state investing. But this little app, it doesn't just track your monthly income and expenses. It gives you some in-depth information about the market surrounding your property investment, such as lease expirations and vacancy rates. Property Evaluator, that's another app, and I have this one on my phone. It's just a quick way to analyze a property in under 5 minutes when you want to go beyond that more superficial 1% RV ratio and you want to find a property's projected cash flow. Apart from a full portfolio analysis of a property of interest, this is really one of the best apps for real estate investors because it gives you in-depth information including multiple photos, itemized improvements, and even closing costs. So again, that's the Property Evaluator app. The Landlord app, as the title suggests, this app is for landlords and property managers. The Landlord app, it saves property owners a lot of time, not only by actively managing the properties you own, but the app even exports all of your data to a CSV file so that come tax time, all the information that you need for your taxes is going to be right there. Another website is DocuSign, okay? Even if you're 10,000 miles away from your turnkey seller, DocuSign tosses distance to the wind. It gives you the ability to seamlessly send and sign documents in mere seconds. And DocuSign's been out there for quite a long time. If you've closed any transaction in the last 5+ years, you know about DocuSign, and it's really supplanted a lot of people that used to work in the courier business. LoopNet is a commercial real estate search site and app, and it's really one of the most cutting edge of the best apps for real estate investors. And it's really undergone a number of revisions to cater to the needs of investors. It's got a lot of pretty good intuitive filters, numerous photographs of properties, and more. So you're probably already familiar with LoopNet, but they have a really good app as well, mostly for commercial property, but there's a lot of multifamily residential on there as well. Dropbox is a great file sharing app. You can categorize, organize, and even specify who you want to show certain information to and who you want to hide it from. The attraction with Dropbox is its incredible simplicity. I use Dropbox several times a week myself to share files with others. Another app is Mortgage Calculator. It's a good tool for anyone that just doesn't enjoy financial surprises, okay? Mortgage Calculator, it's kind of an all-encompassing tool where you can accurately estimate your monthly mortgage payments, and it provides you with a final future payoff date. OpenFolio is a website, and the open part of that name is no mistake. Rather than portfolio, it's called OpenFolio. That's where you can open up and share your portfolio with peers in your age group, and on a percentage basis, you can compare how your investments are performing against others. So if you're concerned about privacy, it's only the percentages of your portfolio allocations that are compared with others, okay? It's not the dollar amount. And when you share that information with each other, it brings up discussion, and you're going to learn a lot of things about other people's portfolios and what they're doing that you hadn't considered previously. Now, the only downside is that OpenFolio is a stock, ETF, and mutual fund-based app and website. But if someone developed this for real estate, there's a potential business idea. The Kitco app, Kitco. That's one I've mentioned before, and I've had the Kitco app on my phone for a long time. It's for tracking precious metals price movement minute by minute with easy access to charts right there with just one click. You can also check out charts for the precious metals. They've long had the best precious metals app that I've known about. That's kitco.com or the Kitco app. TheBullionDesk.com is another up-to-the-minute precious metals pricing site. So that's about it for websites and apps. This is Get Rich Education, and an educated listener is an informed listener. So here's hoping that you've learned of a new resource or two that are going to bring more wealth into your life sooner. And, since real estate investing has all these it depends factors and it doesn't fit into one box, there's no one be-all, end-all website for analyzing every aspect of your potential real estate deal, okay? It's just not that simple. Real estate intersects with everything from politics to credit scores to soil engineering, okay? If real estate were as efficient as being able to be quantified and qualified in one be-all, end-all site, well, then it would be more easily packaged, commoditized, and securitized, and you wouldn't be able to exploit real estate's inefficiencies and your knowledge into something profitable for yourself. So it's kind of a good thing that it is this way. Of course, you can look in today's show notes for a list of all these great resources that we've mentioned. Special thanks to today's guest, Seth Williams. We didn't have time to mention everything out there, of course, so I bet you've got a favorite real estate investing or productivity website or app that Seth and I didn't mention. If so, let GRE know by sending an email to info@getricheducation.com. That's info@getricheducation.com. Let us know if you make a suggestion that we think would be of value to another GRE listener, and there are enough of those suggestions, then we'll send the links to all of those resources and apps out directly to you through our newsletter subscriber list. You'll get a list of them all. So it's sort of one GRE listener helping another that way. If you want to subscribe to our newsletter so that you don't miss out on that and more, you can subscribe to our newsletter at getricheducation.com. Our GRE newsletter is also where you receive webinar invitations to private buying opportunities for turnkey real estate in investor advantage markets. Again, that's our newsletter at getricheducation.com. Until next week, happy investing. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
You've been listening to Get Rich Education, telling you what the wealthy won't tell you about real estate and investing. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to visit iTunes and leave your comments.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.